They brought Rebecca Park to their home. They forced her into a vehicle and took her into the woods where they stabbed her, forced her to lie on the ground while they cut her baby out of her, ultimately causing her death and the death of the baby.
The murder of Rebecca Park is genuinely almost impossible to comprehend, not just because of the brutality, but because of who is accused of carrying it out. Rebecca was just 22 years old. She was 38 weeks pregnant, on the verge, literally, of giving birth, preparing to welcome her child into the world. But in November 2025, she vanishes. And what follows would expose a web of lies, manipulation, and relationships that are so tangled, they almost defy belief. Because when Rebecca was finally found, her body told a story far more horrifying than anyone had imagined. And her unborn baby, it was gone. And the people at the centre of this case, they weren't strangers lurking in the shadows. They were family. Hi guys, welcome back. Woo! You know, if you regularly listen to me, that I have 4 children. I've got 2 older boys, I've got a 2-year-old, and I've got an 8-month-old. I have lived my life working in the arena of safeguarding where children are concerned. And when it comes down to pregnancy, I always struggled. I had to have treatment for all of my kids. I'm very lucky that I have 4 children. And because of it, when I find cases which involve babies and expectant mothers, for some reason, it just resonates with me and hits me in a slightly different way. I have this natural connection with the feelings that you have when you are really valuing the fact that you are about to become a parent and you're thinking about the possibilities and the hopes and the aspirations and the plans that you have. And then when you see individuals have those dreams stolen from them in the most despicable way, and boy, today's case, guys, it's going to example that perfectly. It makes it feel personal. When I was doing the research for this, it felt personal. And I think that those of you who love children, you are going to connect with this because of those feelings too. Let's go back to November 2025. And let me tell you, this is quite a complicated story. I will do my best to make it as simple as possible, but there are quite a lot of strands that come into play. So going back to November 2025, desperate searches are being carried out. People want to find a missing 22-year-old Michigan woman. She's called Rebecca Park. Like I said, 38 weeks pregnant. So, of course, people are searching for her. She's vanished. This could be a woman who's gone into labour somewhere and needs immediate attention. We know things like preeclampsia can occur at this point. Is she in a hospital somewhere that people aren't aware of? Is she injured somewhere? What is happening that this 38-week pregnant woman has disappeared? She was living with a boyfriend, a guy called Richard Lee Fallor in Cedar Creek Township. And at this point, though she's disappeared, numerous tips and leads are coming in, but they are literally leading nowhere. You know, the thing about human beings, we are good on the whole. When we hear about somebody who's vulnerable like this just going missing, we will remember the finest of details and we will turn them in often. Even if it leads to nothing, it's because we care deeply about bringing this person home. And understandably, every single lead needs to get explored, and they can be multiple in nature, but nothing is leading to actually finding her. Now, the information that the police do have is that the last people to see her are her own family members. This is on November the 3rd. Apparently, this is after she leaves her mother's home. So her family have been present with her. She then leaves her mother's home, disappears into the ether. Now, her sister, Kimberly Park, she'd reported her missing the next day. So it's 12:44 p.m. And at this point, she suggests to the police she's worried she hasn't seen her sister. She should be in contact with her. And she says, I do know the last person that she was with was her mother, Cortney Bartholomew. And this is not unusual, is it? When you're heavily pregnant, a lot of people in that situation want to be around their mums. I literally was in my mother's pocket for my entire first 2 pregnancies, and pretty much onwards until her death, because she was always a present figure in my life and obviously was really important, particularly in my boys' upbringing. So it is contextual that you would be with your mum at a stage like this. Now, at this point, one of the things that concerns the officers is that detectives find Rebecca's phone. It was actually found alongside a road, and Kimberly was the person who managed to track the location. As we know, people have Find My Phone, and you can family share it, or you can have Snapchat with locations on, and clearly it leads to this phone. But that is devastating, isn't it? What's happened to this woman, this 38-week pregnant mother-to-be? Why is her phone on the side of the road? Has somebody abducted her? Now, when the police go and speak with her mother, as you will, that's the last person that was seen with her, Cortney Bartholomew says that I was absolutely with my daughter until 8:30 p.m. that night. At that point, something kind of strange happened though. One of her friends picked her up in a black sedan. It also had tinted windows and it didn't have a notable number plate. I don't know about you guys, but if my daughter, who's 38 weeks pregnant, is going to get into a tinted vehicle and it doesn't have a number plate on, I'm going to be asking who they are. It's going to worry me because I don't know who these people are and why they're disguising themselves by not having a number plate. But she doesn't ask that question. She says she doesn't know who the friend is and she couldn't see inside the vehicle, so she can't identify them. Now, over the next few days, the family's claim of what they believe happened and also what they knew, the only way I can describe it is it's a contradicting mishmash of information. I have done my best, however, to condense this over multiple different interviews that have been carried out to try to create a fabric of foundation to how this case played out. So they find out through Cortney's sister that Cortney had told her that she had given birth at 28 weeks pregnant. Because apparently Cortney, the mother of Rebecca, was also pregnant, although 10 weeks less pregnant. So she's told her sister, I have had this baby on October the 28th. But then on November the 3rd, this is, bear in mind, the same day that Rebecca was last seen, Cortney had then texted her sister claiming that the baby had died, but she didn't know why, and claimed that she watched the baby die in front of her, which is very strange because, first of all, you've told your sister that you gave birth at 28 weeks on October the 28th, but you're then letting her know, no, actually, it's not that date. I actually gave birth to this baby and watched the child die in front of me. So we are in a scenario where, was the baby born 28 weeks pregnant on October the 28th? And did it die then? Or did it live for a week and then die? Or did you have the baby and it was fine and then something's gone wrong? It just doesn't make sense. But now she's claiming that she doesn't know why the baby's died, but she's watched the baby die in front of her. Now, the procedure after that kind of an event is to speak to emergency services because they have to log that death. We're after a point where a child is considered viable and that child will need to be recorded. So this is really confusing for her sister. Now, in a police interview, she will then admit that she has actually been in a relationship with Richard Fowler. Remember that name? That name relates to Rebecca, Cortney's daughter, because Richard Fowler was actually dating Rebecca. And yet, apparently, he's also dating Rebecca's mother. Now, apparently, she was going to divorce her husband at the time because she wants to be with Richard. Was Rebecca aware of this bizarre ménage à trois? Was she aware her own mother was apparently dating her partner? This seems very strange. Now, she also said to the police that she was pregnant, but that she didn't know who the father was. Let me just throw it out there. You'd hope it would be your husband, even though you want to divorce him, surely. But no, she says she doesn't know who the father was. And she also alleges that Richard had threatened to shoot her own husband, Bradley Bartholomew. So this is a very twisted scenario. We have Cortney, Rebecca, and Richard all involved in some kind of strange relationship. And I guess she's also trying to suggest that Richard is so infatuated with her that he's thinking about shooting her husband, Bradley Bartholomew, to get him out of the way. She then claims in an interview to have had a miscarriage because, wait for it, Richard, the man that apparently is so enamored with her, has raped her. Now, again, think about what she said to her sister versus what she's now talking about to the police. This completely contradicts what she told her sister about watching her baby die in front of her after it was born, and it immediately raises suspicion, especially after, guess what? Investigators find zero medical confirmation of any pregnancy. And let's be clear, doctors know, medics know, notes will confirm that you are pregnant. At this point, she also paints Richard as this aggressive person and claims that she'd actually advised Rebecca to break up with him, even though apparently she was seeing him too. She said that her and Richard were arguing frequently, and so was Rebecca. Rebecca was apparently having conflict with Richard, especially over money, and that Rebecca had claimed that he was acting like a big-ass mom. I don't know what that insult's meant to be. A big-ass mom? With respect, I don't think size should come into it anyway, but certainly mum tends to be the kind of individual who sorts everything out. I can't see it as an insult, but anyway, I guess there is an indication that he's not acting like a man in that moment. She also suggests that Rebecca's been acting strange, apparently having 2 phones and deleting messages. This is again something that I find strange from Cortney. Look, I like to think I pay attention to people in life. Of course, if my husband had a burner phone on him and another phone on him, I am going to think, what are you doing with that phone? And then he'll show me, because that's what trusting relationships are about. He has a business phone, he has a personal phone. You have to do that in the UK because HMRC will come for you if you use your personal phone for your business. But if he had a phone that seemed to be used for a different purpose, I'm going to be interested in that. But that's because I see him 24/7. I work with him. We've got kids together. We're always together. If my kids were doing that, I swear to you, my older boys, I wouldn't know. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't even be interested. They do they. It's up to them to live how they want to live. I wouldn't be looking at them and thinking, what are you doing with those phones? And how would I know they were deleting messages? How am I that engaged and involved in an oversight of their personal phone experience? Also, there was apparent evidence of payments that were supposed to be made from Cortney to Rebecca, allegedly of around $18,000. Turns out that Cortney had never given Rebecca that $18,000. That's a lot of money. This is even though she'd sent her photos of checks, obviously alleging that she's going to pay, but never actually paying. So now we've got a financial issue here. What's going on that Cortney has borrowed this much money from her daughter? What's going on that Cortney is having a relationship with her daughter's partner? It sounds very twisted. So detectives at this point are really suspicious. But anytime they confront Cortney about the fact that they believe that essentially she could be responsible for her daughter going missing, she's just really aggressive and defensive. She'll say things like, why the fuck would I do that? And I would never hurt my daughter. And for most of us, they would seem like appropriate responses, because the last thing the majority of us would ever do is harm a hair on the head of one of our children, let alone make them disappear. Now, they end up speaking to Bradley Bartholomew, who is Cortney's husband and also Rebecca's stepfather. He admitted that his relationship with Cortney was rocky. He claimed that he wasn't even at the residence the night that Rebecca went missing, but he said that Cortney happened to have his phone. I'm just going to throw it out there. That seems a little bit convenient. Got a rocky relationship with your wife. How does she end up with your phone? I'm just going to throw it out there. If I'm out, my phone is with me. I am not going to be leaving my phone anywhere unless it's by mistake. And this means that, again, they have that suspicion pricked. Why did she have your phone? Because that feels like, again, a way of creating a scenario where we don't know where you were, but you're saying you weren't where your phone was. Now, they also have suspicion around his truck, because he's claimed it hasn't been moved in years, but then he says, oh no, I did recently move it. I had to clean the seats, I had to clean it in preparation for Cortney's son Bentley, because I want him to be able to drive it when he turns 16. So again, is this just a coincidence? Or does it speak of something sinister that could have happened to Rebecca? So before we go further into the details of what plays out in this crime, let's just take a moment to look at who this family is, who the family members are, and of course, the relationships that they have to one another. So we've got Bradley Bartholomew, Cortney's husband, the stepfather. Wow. He had a criminal record going back to the 2000s. So he's 47 years age at the time, and his convictions include, wait for it, criminal sexual conduct involving a victim aged 13 to 15. Yeah, you heard me right. He's Rebecca's stepfather. So Cortney made a choice to be with a sex offender, even though she had kids. Also, he had possession of child sexual abuse material, and he'd also failed to register as a sex offender multiple times, including in 2014, 2017, 2024. He's a wrong gun on every single level. Also, he had convictions for parole violations because he don't care about consequences. Also, attempted larceny of building and joyriding, malicious destruction of property, driving while his license was suspended, forgery, just a bit of forgery. Who hasn't been involved in a little bit of forgery, eh? And convictions for receiving stolen goods. So, as you can tell, the kind of stand-up guy you want as your neighbour. Seriously? People like this need to be chased out of their area with pitchforks. Honestly, let's go back to the 1500s and just give it a go. Why would any woman with children ever engage with a sexual predator? And the reason that Rebecca and Kimberly, his stepdaughters, had a rocky relationship with him was because they thought, I don't want to be around a sexual predator, he's a freak. And they actually wouldn't go over if he was there. Then we've got Richard Fowler. This is the man who Rebecca's apparently engaged to at the time. They lived together in a trailer. He is 43 years of age. He's almost double his fiance's age. And guess what? Interestingly, he had an equally disturbing criminal record. In 2003 and in 2015, he is convicted for sexual conduct with an underage person. So he's a pervert. Let's just call him as he is. Just a massive pervert. In 2005, he was convicted of sexual conduct with an incapacitated victim. We all know what that is, don't we? Somebody who's drunk probably, and he took complete advantage of them. So again, pervert, predator of the highest order. So then in 2015, he's convicted again for, wait for it, accosting a child for immoral purposes. Now, what does that mean? It means he's attempted to entice, solicit, or encourage a child under 16 into illegal sexual activity or other immoral acts. He also had sexual assault charges. And can we all scream together? How is this man walking the streets freely? This is a repeat sexual predator of the highest order. He should not be anywhere near human beings, let alone children. Also, it turns out he was heavily involved in drugs, and we are talking the consumption and also the distribution of methamphetamine. I mean, he sounds delightful, doesn't he? It's interesting as well that Rebecca judges her stepfather differently to this man. Isn't that interesting, the way that we can have this bias of belief towards somebody we are in a relationship with? Oh, it's different because I know this person, I love this person won't do anything horrible to me. But equally, it speaks within the person making those choices of a deep vulnerability. And bear in mind, he is double her age. Of course he is, because he ain't interested in grown-ups, is he? He's interested in kids. He's interested in vulnerability. That's why he's chosen her. And she's pregnant by him. This man should not be within 1,000 miles of a child. But here he is in the presence of a girl who's pregnant by him. Now let's talk about Rebecca Park, who's obviously the victim in this case. So she was 22 years of age, so she's a very young girl. She's still got a lot of growing to go through. Obviously, she's pregnant. Her life has not been straightforward. So she was an adopted child. She was adopted when she was 1 year of age with her sister, Kimberly, who was a year younger than her. Also, an older brother was adopted too. And I know that being adopted is often a gift. I think it is absolutely breathtaking that human beings open their homes to children who are not biologically theirs. They have the grace and they have the compassion to make those children feel loved and valued, just as they would love and value a biological child. And it is astonishing what adoptive parents have to go through to finally meet the child they're going to take home. But also we know that it can be very challenging for children who are adopted because they feel rejected, they feel abandoned, they feel they weren't good enough at times. So there can be that myriad of psychological questioning that goes with this experience. Now, her foster mother a woman called Stephanie Park, later said that she genuinely saw those children that she adopted as her own children. And Stephanie described Rebecca as having some issues with her mental health, some mental illness, and some troubles. But she said, you know what? In spite of that, she was a really loving person. She was somebody who loved music. She was somebody who adored crafts. She loved to sing. She said that Rebecca also loved gardening. And Stephanie said genuinely she could grow anything. And her favourite flower were always poppies. Now, Rebecca is young. She's only 22. But she also has two sons of her own. They're aged 3.5 and 2. At this point, her foster mother is taking care of her. Obviously, Stephanie is an incredible woman. I mean, she's just taken on Rebecca's children as well. And this is because Rebecca knew she was not able to take care of her boys by herself. She wanted them to be raised like she had been raised, with the same loving parents. I don't know who the father of the other children are, but I do know that they're in the right place with Stephanie. Now, we do know that at this point, Rebecca is 38 weeks pregnant with Richard's child. Also, she is taking care of one of her sister's children, who is 1 year of age at that time. But Rebecca's really excited at this point. She's excited for her new baby. She thinks she's got a partner who's going to bring this child up. She's been planning a gender reveal party. She was looking at little outfits to buy. She's excited. And when you think about the fact that this is an anticipation of positive future, and yet what I am talking about is the complete opposite, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. Now, I've already mentioned Cortney, who is Rebecca and Kimberly's biological mother. She's 40 years of age at the time, so she was relatively young when she had her children, who obviously ended up being adopted by Stephanie. They have got back in contact. We do know that lots of adoptions are open, so you'll still have contact with your biological parent. It will just be at a reduced level, but this is often really good for children because they feel that they've not had their door closed on the wider family from their biological standpoint. But it can also be confusing, can't it? Because sometimes you want to repair relationships to a point where you feel you have that relationship with the birth mother that you always craved, but sometimes the birth mother does not have the capacity to relate to you in a positive way. And we already know Cortney, the birth mother, is seeing Rebecca's own partner. So we're not going to paint her in a positive light from the get-go. She, as I said, is 40 years of age, but she's got her own troubles. One thing that she had to struggle with is her disability. She's got one leg. We know that she also has a son named Bentley, but the relationship that she has with her husband, Bradley, it apparently isn't very good. It's quite toxic, but it's toxic mostly because of her. She's tried to stab him with scissors before. He filed charges against her. They did get dismissed, but that tells you the kind of woman she is. And aside from that violent assault on her husband, she also had multiple infractions with law enforcement. They're less serious than those of Bradley and Richards, but nonetheless they exist. So owning an unlicensed dog, unlawful plate, failure to report an accident, fraud, driving with an expired license, allowing unlicensed drivers to operate, false or forged ID, lying to a police officer, there were 2 convictions for that, false reporting of a misdemeanor. So just constant, like I said, going against the legal standpoint that means that she's an ethical and moral human being in our society. Now, what the police know at this point is that on November the 1st, the family have all had dinner together. So there's Rebecca, there's Kimberly, there's Richard, there's Cortney, there's Bradley, and there's Cortney's son, Bentley. They're all there. We get to November the 2nd. Rebecca has one of those moments where she thinks, my God, I'm going into labour. It's a false alarm. At this point, she is discharged from the hospital. And it's the day after that, on November the 3rd, when she goes over to Cortney and Bradley's home. At this point, remember, she's seen leaving in the strange car. Now, before that, Cortney said they got ice cream together. They've been to a shop to get Tide pods. For those of you who don't know what they are, they're very effective cleaning pods. It's interesting because when I gave birth to my first son, he's called Tide, Tyde. And I met several older people who said, did I name him after washing powder? I didn't. But having been in America for quite an extended period of time, I can tell you, if I was going to buy a cleaner in America, it would be Tide. It's very effective. I digress. However, we get to November the 22nd, and then all of a sudden, Kimberly, Rebecca's sister, goes live on TikTok. And she says live on TikTok that she's aware of information that Cortney and Brad Bartholomew had something to do with her sister going missing. So curiouser and curiouser. Cortney said that she saw her daughter get in a car and disappear, and yet Rebecca's own sister is denying this and pointing the finger of blame at Cortney and Brad. That very same day she's brought in for an interview, detectives then ask her questions and she ends up confiding in them that Cortney and Brad have struck Rebecca in the head that's caused her to have a seizure, and they cannot revive her from that seizure. She also says that Bradley then contacted a friend who came to pick up her body, and then she mentioned that she heard something about a swamp. So now the detectives believe they have a true lead. They've got a first-person witness who's related to this situation, related to the person who's gone missing, and they're talking of an altogether harrowing demise where Rebecca is concerned. Now, detectives soon learn that Kimberly, who had reported this information, turns out, bizarrely, to also be in a relationship with Richard Lee Fowler. Can we just take a moment and ask ourselves why anyone would want to be with this sex offender, but 3 women from the same family? It's bizarre. And of course, she says this complicated the relationship that she had with him because it complicated the relationship that it had with her sister. So it's this very bizarre scenario where all these women are seeing this one man. So Rebecca, her sister, and her mother are all apparently dating this sex offender predator of the highest level. Obviously, they all have terrible choices where men are concerned. It's as simple as that. Now, within the days after this, Bradley, well, he starts to tell a different story. Of course, Kimberly has implicated him in the disappearance of Rebecca. Well, now he's going to say, wrong. It was Kimberly. So he says Kimberly took her down a track behind the house and killed her. He says that she made comments about wanting to, quote, get her out of the picture. I imagine because she was so enamored with Richard, who wouldn't be? I'll just kill my sister so I can achieve this sex offender predator for myself. But isn't it interesting? No one's denying that something awful's happened to Rebecca. They're just denying that they're the person who did it. Now we get to November the 25th. This is when ultimately the worst news comes in. Don't get me wrong. The investigators knew that they weren't going to get Rebecca back alive because these individuals are all indicating that something terrible's happened to her. On November the 25th, 911 gets a call reporting that they've discovered a body. It's been covered by leaves. And to make this even more horrific, the body seems like it's been, quote, gutted. She was pregnant. She was 38 weeks pregnant. And her body has been gutted. She's been womb raided. After weeks worth of searching for Rebecca, police finally arrive and her body is found off the Federal Forest Service Road, which if you measure it in a direct line is 2.5 miles west from the Bartholomew residence. They know it's her. They identify her due to a tattoo that she had above her eye. And of course, they can see immediately that baby that was due to be born is nowhere to be seen. It's clear immediately just by looking at Rebecca that she suffered sharp force injuries to her neck, to her abdomen. She'd literally been slashed open. The baby had been removed. At the scene, they also find cutting instruments consistent with sharp force injuries, blood-stained clothing. They also find the placenta. They also find items belonging to Kimberly, such as a debit card. When they carry out the autopsy, it just shows the brutality of the killing. And let's remember, there is a young woman, 22, 38 weeks pregnant, who's gone through what I'm going to speak about now. The horror she must have felt being murdered at the hands of people she knew. How do you even begin to make sense of that momentarily as it's happening to you? There were 6 sharp force wounds to her back, 2 to the right upper arm, 1 to the left trapezius area, 2 to the neck, and at least 2 to the face. The right side of her face also had a laceration. Also, there was a irregular wound to her cheek. Her abdomen had incised wounds, and the placenta was literally hanging from the open abdominal wound with the umbilical cord still attached. However, as we know, the baby was absent. Her stomach also contained a copious amount of a blue-green chalky residue. I haven't been able to find the explanation as to why that was there, but it was present. Now, after discovering the body, Kimberly Park is arrested on charges of firstly tampering with evidence in a criminal case, lying to police during a violent crime investigation, and filing a false report of a felony. The judge at this point sets her bail at $750,000. Richard Fowler, he is then also arrested on 2 counts of delivering methamphetamine. Now, it's unrelated to the homicide, but nonetheless, they clearly believe he is heavily related to this because his bail is set at $1 million. They want him inside. Then, phone warrants are secured. Location history confirms that both Cortney and her husband had both been present in the area that the body was found. Then the police get the phone warrants. These are always so incriminating, aren't they? And once they go through that search history, it confirms that both Cortney and Bradley had both been present in the area that Rebecca's phone was found. And guess where else? The area her body was found. Police then get the search warrants for the Bartholomew home and both of them are arrested. They're then transported to the Wexford County's Sheriff's Office. It's a shame that they haven't got some kind of vehicle that can take them straight to hell. But apparently they haven't been able to create one yet. We are hoping that Elon Musk will come through with the goods at some point in the future. Now, when they speak to Bradley, he admits to lying about his whereabouts. He says, look, the reason I lied to you, I was scared. I'm a previous sex offender. I don't want to get into trouble. I genuinely don't know what's happened. I was home the day that she went missing. So he's denying that he's involved. He then claims that Cortney left with Rebecca and then came back, telling him that she and Richard had an argument. He then says, this is when I saw blood on the dashboard of the white vehicle and she asked me to clean it up, and I did clean it up. He also claims that he also noticed that there was white paint on the seat covers, so he decided to dispose of those too. He said that he began after doing this to put 2 and 2 together, particularly when Cortney told him that she and Rich had done something horrible. But she also then claims that she's going to make his life hell if he says anything. And he said she never actually informed me of what she'd done. So he is pointing the blame directly at Richard and Cortney's feet. But when law enforcement had last spoke to him, bear in mind, there was an issue because he blamed Kimberly. So who is he saying did this? Sounds to me like he's just pointing the blame in any direction aside from his own. Now, he then goes on to say that Cortney was never pregnant. So you know that story that she was 28 weeks pregnant and that she'd given birth and the baby had died? It's just a massive lie. In fact, he goes on to say that what was really going to happen was that she was going to adopt a child. But she had an issue with that because, of course, you know, when it comes down to placing children, we don't tend to do that when the partner is a known sex offender. So he essentially goes on to say that he believes Cortney is capable of killing Rebecca. He knows that she was desperate for a child of her own. He believes that she would 100% be capable of killing Rebecca for her baby. And also so she can then get back into a relationship with Richard, Rebecca's partner. What kind of a selfish MOF would want to do that to their own daughter? But this is the story he's telling. He also recalled that Rebecca was told, don't you dare have this baby in the hospital. Again, why would Cortney say that? Most people would want their daughter to have the baby in hospital to make sure that they're safe. Does she want it to be that no one is aware this child has been born to her daughter? No trail that can lead people to Rebecca actually having give birth when it seems that Cortney has decided once that child arrives, she is taking that child. Doesn't matter that Rebecca is the mother. She's set her sights on that baby. She's decided that a gap needs to be filled and Rebecca's baby can fill that gap. Rebecca, however, is a problem. Because how can Cortney and Rich have this baby and bring this baby up if Rebecca is still in the picture? Now, on the same day that Bradley is telling this story, guess what? Cortney, well, she's now decided that she can tell the authorities who is really to blame. And guess who's to blame? Well, apparently it's Bradley. It's her husband. And she is so ready to sing like a canary that she's saying to the detectives, listen, you need to get me in touch with the prosecutor. And that prosecutor needs to give me immunity because I have got information that they want to hear. So this woman, this excuse for a mother, she has decided that they are going to be like, really? You've got information? Yeah, I've got information. But for this information, there'll be a price. What would that price be? I get immunity. So that means that no matter what you've done or contributed to within this crime, you just get to go scot-free. Exactly that. And when you give me that, I will tell you everything that you need to know. Said no real case ever in real time. But this is what she is doing. So you want to hear this information, I'll tell it you, but you just need to make sure that I get off. And at one point, Cortney goes so far as to even claim that Bradley, her husband, was in fact the biological father of the child that Rebecca was going to have. Now, when the police ask the most important question, because we know it's too late for Rebecca, it's harrowing, she's dead, but there's a baby. They need to find this baby. When asked if the missing baby is still alive, she shakes her head. And then she tells the detectives it's inside a blue cooler. It's been thrown away in the garbage. There's a full-term baby thrown away in the garbage. When I believe that Cortney wants a baby, and this is how that baby has been treated after that baby has been carved out, ripped from its mother's belly. She also said that Bradley had used his white truck to dispose of the body. This is the same truck that Bradley tells detectives he'd seen her come home with, where there was blood on the dashboard. She also said that he told her not to say a fucking word and said that she would find out soon enough and that Rich had fucked with the wrong motherfucker. So she's trying to build this picture that she's innocent. Bradley is the creator of this crime, and also that Rich is in danger too, so he's an innocent victim. She claims that Bradley told her that he had slit this poor girl's throat, and more than that, that Rebecca deserved it. She tells them that in her bedstand, she keeps razor knives, which are apparently like scalpels, which she used to nick open her cellulite. Sorry, I don't even know whether that happens in the world. Do people actually do that? Do people take little razors to their skin and cellulite and open it? It feels like a really bizarre thing to do. Somebody's going to leave a comment and say, no, actually, Emma, I do this regularly, but I don't know why you would have these little scalpels to nick open your cellulite in your drawers. She also says that apparently one of them had gone missing. She must be a diligent kind of person. Don't know about you. I don't go around actually counting how many razors I've got to do my legs with. I just know when I've run out. But apparently, yeah, she's a diligent little cookie. She makes sure that she knows exactly admin-wise where those scalpels are, and she notices that one's gone missing. How convenient. He's admitted that he slit somebody's throat, and she now has, obviously, the weapon that was used. Just play with that in your mind for a moment. If somebody really does say that they've slit someone's throat open, why would you think, oh, it will be that missing scalpel? It's not of interest to you how they did it. The thing is, they did it. That's what matters most. She also gives conflicting multiple stories and reasons as to why he would have then thought, you know what I'm going to do? I've just murdered Rebecca. I best cut the baby out. Who in their right mind would think this story was going to fly? But that's what apparently she's pushing, that he didn't want to see Cortney and Rich together. So getting the baby out and making sure the baby died, it was revenge. Now also, she says it was because the baby wasn't breathing. So lots of different stories that make no sense. And another reason that she gave was that he didn't want anyone else to find the baby as it would have survived. And he didn't want it to survive, which contradicts the last reason that she gave. So the baby was born not breathing. So that's why we don't know where the baby is now. It's just been thrown away. But then he waited so that the baby was breathing and then left it so that no one could find it. So eventually it died. Like I said, contradicting that other statement. Just a myriad of ridiculous explanations that make no sense and that don't explain how any of this is truly played out. Also, she conflicts herself again by now mentioning a hunting knife. So it was a scalpel in the side drawer, but now it's a hunting knife. And apparently Bradley disposed of that. She also, at this point, mentions Kimberly's involvement and said that she had just lied because she wanted to feel important. Now, I think we can all align ourselves with that. I mean, if I'm not on TikTok every other day accusing people in my family of carrying out deplorable acts, including murder, I don't know what I'm doing with my free time. I mean, it's just contextual, isn't it? Our lives. You got a few minutes free. Who can I accuse of killing right now? Oh, my uncle. Tomorrow, it might be my sister. I just like to make sure that I give myself some kind of attention because I need those likes to make me feel important. But again, Cortney is just throwing blame at everyone. They then speak to Bradley again. Of course they do, because now they've got all this loaded information that's going to antagonise and make him angry because he's getting implicated in a way he doesn't want to get implicated. And at this point, it's like, well, you know what? I do have some other things to say. And he actually says, you know what? My blue cooler is missing. How interesting that the baby's been thrown away in a blue cooler and my blue cooler is missing. At this point, detectives confront him on the multiple different conflicts within his story, and also now the fact that Cortney is blaming him, and also the fact that he had knowledge of multiple pieces of information that someone would only know if they were there, such as having leaves on Rebecca's body, which is something he talks about. This is when the interview begins to change. And he says, okay, I did witness Cortney cut the baby out of Rebecca's stomach. And he said that happened in the same place the body was discovered. He also said that he saw that the baby was dead when it was removed. He also claimed that Cortney had stabbed Rebecca in the truck beforehand. He said Cortney's motive was that she thought Rebecca was, quote, always bad-mouthing her and wouldn't give her the chance to be a mum. Can we just analyse that for a second? Because I think what we can draw down from that is that Rebecca had the mark of this woman. The idea that you think killing somebody is okay because they're apparently bad-mouthing you, and the idea that you're annoyed with them because they think you're not a great mom, whilst you are simultaneously ripping an unborn baby from their stomach as you kill them, and you're actually their mother who is killing them. That kind of meets the definition of a pretty terrible mother, doesn't it? Bradley also says the main motivation is she wanted that baby for herself. And there is something ultimately terrible about what I'm going to tell you now, because it turns out that Rebecca was still alive when Cortney was cutting that baby out. And when she had first been stabbed, she did try to walk away. She was unable to run at the time. She was heavily pregnant, but she didn't have a chance, did she? Cortney went over to her, attacked her again, cut the baby out. And devastatingly, it turns out that Rebecca had tried to escape after being stabbed. She couldn't run though. She was vulnerable. She was heavily pregnant. He said then Cortney tried to give the baby CPR, and he actually drove her back to the house with the baby on her lap. They get back to the home. They put the baby on a towel on the bed and they try to perform CPR again for about 15 minutes. They realise after this, the baby's dead. Rebecca's dead. The baby's dead. It was all for nothing. They then put that beautiful child that never got to exist in a bin bag, then inside a cooler for around 2 days, and then they just throw it away in a GFL dumpster on November the 5th. He actually said that he believed that Cortney had planned this for a while without even telling him. He also said that he blamed Rebecca at the time, saying, "The bitch killed my baby." Now, when I tell you that the Cortneys of this world have special cells in hell where they will roast painfully for eternity, believe me, they exist. And believe me, she is going to go there. Karma ain't a bitch, but the devil is in these cases. Now, Cortney eventually goes on during questioning to admit that she was there. But she essentially tells the same story as Bradley, but guess what? It wasn't she that stabbed Rebecca. No, it was Bradley who stabbed Rebecca and cut out the baby. Now, just put yourself in this position. If you're the mother and you find the husband that you don't really like and you're in a divorce, killing your child and trying to remove the baby from your child's stomach, he's going to have to hope you haven't got something heavy that you're going to be able to hit him with. And at the very least, you will be on top of him, dragging him off and preventing him from carrying out that kind of horrible attack. But no, that didn't happen. But she ends up going back on herself. She ends up admitting to being the one who cut that baby out. And while Rebecca was dealing with that horror, was dealing with her mother, her biological mother, not the one who loved her, not Stephanie, the biological mother who gave birth to her, taking her life from her. Whilst cutting her baby from her belly, she was awake while that baby was being taken. And you know what she said? She told her to hurry up because she wanted to save her child. She asked her to save her child and to give her child to Richard. She also said that she reached into the car at that point to get dental floss, to use it to cut the umbilical cord, and then Bradley apparently slit her throat. It sounds like they were very prepared, doesn't it? She also said that Bradley had attached her, as in Rebecca, to the truck after doing this, using a cord, and they then pull that 22-year-old's body down the bank around 20 feet, where he then covers her body with leaves. She said it was his plan and that he'd apparently been researching how to do it for the last 2 months. She also admitted that they had intentionally gone back to the scene and placed items from Kimberly's bag, which meant that they would hopefully implicate Kimberly. They've really thought this through. When the detectives go and speak with Kimberly again, well, her story changes. This time she tells them that Richard had made a comment to her about Rebecca being, quote, taken care of. Also admits to them that he asked her to lie about the story of her parents hitting her over the head and causing the seizure. She tells detectives that Richard Fowler had admitted to killing her sister, saying that something went wrong while trying to cut the baby out of her. But he also kept encouraging her to share misleading information, which is the reason that she'd ended up going live on social media. What is astounding here is who is caring for Rebecca in this moment? None of them. Not even her sister Kimberly. He also tells her that a man named Austin Nowland was involved. Now, it turns out Nowland is someone who'd been in romantic relationships with both sisters, so Kimberly and Rebecca had seen him, so they're bringing him into the mix. Detectives, of course, then interview Nowland, who willfully provided phone records which show he wasn't anywhere in the area on November the 3rd and 4th when she'd gone missing. He also allowed them to search his vehicle, which was a Chevrolet Malibu, so they know it's not him. On December the 2nd, 2025, in the 84th District Court in Cadillac, Michigan, Cortney Bartholomew and Bradley Bartholomew were arraigned before Judge Corey Wiggins on multiple felonies. These included first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, torture, conspiracy to commit torture, assault on a pregnant individual causing miscarriage, conspiracy to commit the assault, unlawful imprisonment, and removal of a dead body. Bond was denied, rightfully so, at the arraignment stage for both defendants. Now, the prosecution at this point emphasised the severity of the charges and argued that continued detention was absolutely necessary given the seriousness of the allegations. Also, Kimberly's bond, that ends up being reduced to $5,000 with 10% cash required for release. She did post that. She was then placed upon GPS house arrest. Richard Fowler's bond was also reduced to $5,000. He was also placed on GPS house arrest too. However, unsurprisingly, when you think about monsters like this man, he was arrested yet again on domestic violence charges following a reported physical altercation with a 21-year-old male. He was then put back into Wexford County Jail. He was then released on a bond of $25,000. Now, the probable cause affidavit, which contains most of the information that I've told you, that's become the prosecution's central argument against Bradley and Cortney about their alleged admissions and also those contradictions. Going into January 2026, the defense counsel have raised significant procedural objections. They've argued that the prosecution has failed to provide discovery materials beyond the probable cause affidavit. So, according to the defense, evidence had not been fully disclosed and the delay was prejudicing their ability to prepare. So they asked the court to dismiss the case on the basis of discovery failures or alternatively to set bond. But the prosecution responded saying, listen, the discovery is ongoing. The case is really complex, it's multi-layered. They argued that compiling and turning over evidence in a matter of this magnitude takes time, and that dismissal was not legally appropriate. They further argued that bond should remain denied due to the severity of the charges and the associated risk factors. Fortunately, the judge had sense and declined to dismiss the case, and the bond also remained denied. Then on January the 30th, 2026, the court reviewed the status of discovery. The judge determined that a full show cause hearing was no longer necessary because the discovery materials were being provided or had been forthcoming. The case then was permitted to proceed throughout February 2026. Now, during this period of time, discovery disputes continued. The defence renewed arguments that disclosure was incomplete and further alleged that the evidence again had not been turned over in a timely manner. Again, they seek a dismissal or sanctions based on those delays. But again, the prosecution maintains the discovery production was ongoing, argued there was no legal basis for dismissal. They argue and urge the court to allow the case to proceed to preliminary examination. And the court, again, fortunately does not dismiss the charges. A preliminary examination was then scheduled for March 6, 2026. Now, the purpose of that hearing is to determine whether probable cause existed, that a crime had been committed, and whether probable cause existed that the defendants committed it. Now, if the judge finds sufficient probable cause, the case will be bound over to circuit court for the trial proceedings to begin. At this time, as I'm telling you this information, the case is still in the pre-trial phase, pending that probable cause determination. The charges remain active and both of the defendants continue to be held without bond. There's no trial date being set at this moment. Kimberly Park and Richard Fowler, they are free, as in they are on bond, but currently they are not in prison, but they obviously have their charges. When it comes down to Cortney and Bradley, if they are convicted at trial of the murder and the associated torture assault counts, the expected sentence is life in prison with no parole under Michigan law. Rightfully so. They both deserve that immediately. Let's do that now without even giving them a trial. They deserve to rot. Kimberly, she could face up to 10 years for the tampering with evidence charge and other charges if found guilty. Richard, he faces potential decades if convicted on both the drug and assault charges. Also, devastatingly, her baby's body's never been found. Now, understandably, the community have been devastated by this. Candlelight vigil was held in Boone, Michigan. Guests brought candles, flowers, photographs to celebrate Rebecca's life. They shared memories about her. They offered those quiet moments of reflection as candles filled the area with light. And a vigil coordinator expressed hope that Rebecca was smiling down from heaven right now, watching all this, feeling the love, saying, we need hope now. We need hope that that's how she's feeling. We just want to send some love up to her right now and for her baby. And that's one thing that really stays with me. Bear in mind, I'm a believer in the afterlife. I believe that she is in heaven, and I believe Austin, her baby, is in her arms. And that gives me a tiny shred of comfort. One of her friends described her as a beautiful soul and said she wants people to remember her for the good person she was. Bear in mind, at the time that she went missing, her foster mother, Stephanie Park, remained silent. She wanted to protect the children. She wanted to shield them from further trauma. But she has come out and spoken because she wanted the community to know that Rebecca had a loving home and that her family is absolutely devastated. She said the last time we heard from Rebecca was on Halloween, when we talked about trick-or-treating and when we wished her children happy birthday. She's reminding people of a life that was fully loved. She's reminding them of a girl that was brought up with love and compassion and care in spite of the difficulties. And I think that's so powerful for us to know that Rebecca was loved by Stephanie and was given a beautiful home by Stephanie, and that the children that Rebecca had are now with Stephanie. Like I said, it doesn't make up for what I'm talking about, the horror that's played out in this crime, but it does mean that Rebecca's living children are safe and adored and will always be so. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Look after yourselves. Be safe.